Those are in a little bit. Kathryn Kernoff. And I don't think we have any guests online at the moment. And so we'll get right to it. Sally, we welcome you for your Rotary Minute.
It's a big adjustment. I need to get there.
So my Rotary Minute today is about our club. Some of you see, but probably don't know much about this book that's always on the table when you check in. We'd like everybody to keep a record and write down their volunteer hours. So that means if you work at the food shelf, if you work for Habitat, if you work at Respite House, which Dave Erickson does, if you do some work for the club, like clearing trails and keeping the canoe access open, all of that is volunteer hours. So, and in the past, we've had an opportunity to keep and record these numbers on the website. Charlie and I are both looking, we can't find it. We can't find where you keep a record, but. So I started collecting volunteer hours in 2022. For 4 months of that year, the last 4 months, we recorded 213 volunteer hours. Last year, club performed at least 878 hours. It's probably closer to 1,000 because I know people forget to write down their volunteer hours, or some of you don't even know to do it. So I'm very pleased to say that that we do a lot of volunteer work outside of the club itself, which is what Rotary is all about, right? It's all about service above self. And I'm proud, I'm not bragging, but I am proud that our club does as much service work as we do. Rotarians are indeed people with service and community in mind. So that's the first part of my Rotary Minute. Oh, and by the way, Leslie, don't record half hours. It takes you time to get where you're going and go back home. So round up, okay?
I'll take care of that. I'll make it
Stop recording half hours. Yeah. So the second part of my Rotary Minute is we all get the Rotary magazine. And I know Jen Murphy saw this because she talked about it, or it was either Jen or Aaron. There was an article about a club in Michigan that is very concerned about opiate and substance. And I'd like to say this is an original idea, but it came from that article. I am arranging to have a Narcan training session for the shift leaders at my food shelf, for the Rotary Club and community. It will be sometime in February. I'm working with one of the firefighters to set it up. And I'd like to say that it's going to be sponsored by the Rotary Club. So I'm not sure I don't think there's any cost involved, and I'm not sure we'd have to do any work, although I'll offer. And I will let you all know when this gets set up. But we now carry Narcan at the food shelf, and I think people are more ready and willing to use it if they've been trained. Although I can tell you anybody can give it, but we will have an official training session coming up in February. That's my Rotary Minute.
Thank you, Alex.
And now I invite up the call for our inspiration.
That was way more than a minute.
This one may be more than a minute as well. Recently, I came across some remarkable insights that were shared by a prominent pastor named Molly Basquette. She serves a church in Berkeley, California. Now, I apologize to members of my congregation who are present, because you may have already heard this perspective, but it's probably worth hearing again. Reverend Basquette wrote about recent clinical trials for a medication to treat people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Reverend Basquette apparently had special permission to watch videos recording how patients reacted to the medication. And Reverend Basquette noted, it was moving to see the response of the clinicians when a patient, a participant in the clinical trial, was in distress. Reverend Basquette observed that instead of intervening, minimizing, rushing to fix or change something, the two therapists got off their chairs, quietly got on their knees right next to the sofa where the participant was positioned, and they leaned in to ask a brief question or two, and then sat back to listen well. The results from the clinical trials have been stunning. Over 2/3 of participants lost their PTSD diagnosis entirely, Reverend Basquette points out, and even more received significant relief from symptoms. But just as surprising, Reverend Basquette says, is this. Even the participants who received the placebo benefited immensely from the therapy protocol. It turns out just having someone listen closely and well in a carefully crafted, safe space can free us from the scourge of trauma. Two humans over and over can listen another human being back into living in the present, feeling and free. End quote. Now, it is important to acknowledge that this information comes from a devotional written by a pastor rather than a medical journal article written by a physician or a scientist. And the placebo effect is well known even to those of us who are not scientists. But the point that Reverend Basquette makes goes beyond the impact of a placebo. She is suggesting that the mere act of listening in and of itself can be healing, even transformative. I've spoken with my congregation here about how in recent months it seems as if the whole world is being driven by our reptilian brains. People react on reflex rather than on careful reflection. Whether in the Middle East or in our nation's capital, trauma response seems to have taken control at almost every turn. On a national and global scale, we see traumatized people inflicting trauma upon others, triggering even more trauma response. It becomes a toxic, deadly cycle. But what if Reverend Molly Basquette is right? What if having someone listen closely and well can free us from the scourge of trauma? What if we can listen one another back into living? Perhaps in this profoundly polarized political season, maybe, just maybe, it is worth a try.
Thank you. Does anyone have any announcements for the club on things you're working on or future events?
First of all, that was great. It's actually about time to start thinking about the 5K. And what I'd love to do is sometime early February is maybe have a little Zoom meeting for people interested in participating. I'm hoping folks that were active the last 2 years will continue. But I'll send something to the whole club, just asking for people who'd like to participate. I don't think there's no need to do any detailed planning, but I think some sort of a 30,000-foot view about what we want to do this year, anything we want to change, et cetera. It's not a bad time to do that. I don't think we have to get serious about the details probably until around April 1st or something like that. So first thing we have to do, by the way, is decide what date to have it on. So.
And I think you're contemplating the Saturday, July
Yeah,
6th.
because, yeah.
She'll be back.
right.
Okay.
And along those lines, I heard from the library, the Friends of Library, and we can get books again from the book sale. But they would like people to help at the end. So I will be sending out a notice about people who may be willing to help both ends.
So volunteering.
Volunteer, well, the thing is, what they need is set up and break down, and in return, we can get 4 boxes of books. So,
Perfect.
thank you.
Hey, Barb, what, the books that we, get from the sale, where do we go donate those?
We get 2 boxes of books that we give over to the Williston schools, and 2 boxes of books that go over to, sorry. And 2 boxes of books that go over to the Richmond schools. And they are given to the guidance counselors who distributed them to kids for various, for their own library.
Who could use some books at home? Okay, great. All right, any other?
I'm supposed to do that.
I feel like you keep looking at.
Well, no, I just want to make sure that I
got
didn't miss.
Nothing going on.
All right, so we know that the.
Any questions after, I can definitely talk to people if they have questions. regarding this.
Yeah, so the Bill Skip Story Slam, I think everyone's heard us talking about it a lot, and most of you are involved in some way. But if you haven't purchased your tickets yet and you intend to come, please do so today if you're able, or next week. We're
Or
keeping
they
us,
sign up.
yeah, or
If you
just
don't
let
have
us
the money,
know.
just let us know you're coming. So that we know, we can keep track of how many, we have 125 is the capacity. We're taking into consideration judges, how many people from the Skip family are coming. And then, of course, if we can get a good head count of how many Rotarians, then we really have a better idea of how many tickets we can get out to the rest, to the public.
And we're continuing with our publicity efforts. There'll be an article in the Observer today about the event. But if you know, again, I know I've said this before, but if you know someone who might be a good storyteller and you can attempt to come and put their name in the hat, want to make sure we have enough storytellers. So, a personal outreach to someone like that could make the difference to get them involved. I do think it's going to be wonderful, and I can't wait to hear all the stories that people share with us.
And we do have to keep in mind though, whomever we do, even though we're asking people, just on one-on-one to maybe come with a story, it doesn't mean they'll get to tell their story. We still
Right.
want everyone to put their name in the hat to keep it fair to everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
I just want to say that the libraries that I've been delivering posters to are so excited. First thing they say is, oh my gosh, these posters are beautiful. And then they're like, what a great idea this is.
Get them to buy tickets.
Oh, yeah, we sold 3 last night.
Ah, way to go. All right, anything else before we move to our speaker? All right, Dan, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to introduce our speaker today, Kathryn Kernoff. Kathryn coaches the speech and debate team at CVU. She organized the statewide Vermont Debate and Forensics League, VDFL. Previously, Kathryn was the assistant director of debate at Dartmouth College. As a competitor, she received second place at the National Collegiate Championship 3 years in a row. So Kathryn will discuss the current state of speech and debate in Vermont, the benefits for student participants, and the challenges of growing the activity in a small state. She also happens to be my daughter, and our eldest one, and the reason we moved here. So she and her husband and 3 children are Williston residents. And so, without anything further, Kathryn Kernoff.
Thank you very much. And so first I need to get the elephant in the room out of the way. I'm sorry to say that doing speech and debate did not make me into Winston Churchill. So it's I think one of the misconceptions that people have is that speech and debate are primarily about public speaking. And while they do help kind of build a baseline comfort and competency with public speaking, I'm glad that Pastor Paul talked about listening, because I think they're really about listening to your opponents, listening to what they have to say, and making sure that you are taking that into account and responding to them. So again, I apologize for my own lack of public speaking skills, and I hope this does not, represent that everything that speech and debate is. So this is just kind of some nice quotes from various people who have participated in speech and debate about their importance. And it represents some of the, the wide variety of people who have participated in and benefited from speech and debate. Everyone from Oprah Winfrey to Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said it was very foundational for their personal and professional lives. You can go on to the next slide. So while we're transitioning to the next slide, so this is, again, some background about me. I currently coach the speech and debate team here at CVU, and we're very lucky that we do have a team because many high schools in Vermont do not. And I calculated, I was first involved in speech and debate in 1999, so it's now been a quarter century that I've been involved in speech and debate. And I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of it and why it's been absolutely worth it. So go ahead, you can go on to the next slide. So a couple of the benefits of speech and debate, like I mentioned, first of all, it's not primarily about public speaking, although that, it does build some sort of comfort with talking in front of others, which is important for all varieties of careers, increased confidence, the ability to, express yourself, speak in front of others. Just the process of going through winning and losing speeches and debates builds confidence in the ability that, this is a really hard thing that I did and I can do it. This is one of the difficulties that we have with our students. Speech and debate are really hard. It's really hard sometimes to get them to show up and give it a try because they're afraid of losing. And they're competing against, the best from all over the state of Vermont, which can be really intimidating. But because it is so hard, that's why it is so beneficial. It takes a lot of work that they have to put into it, and then they get a lot out of it in return. There's a lot of studies that it produces higher graduation rates. Again, there's sort of a misconception that speech and debate just attracts, students that are already really successful, already college bound, and that's not true at all. Often the students that benefit the most and enjoy the most from speech and debate are the students that can be disengaged in class sometimes because they need to be more actively involved. And with speech and debate, they are actively involved. They're waiting their turn to speak, and they always get to have their group put in. Students with ADHD that have trouble waiting their turn, speech and debate are great for them. I've coached a number of students with significant ADHD that weren't always very successful in school, but were very successful at speech and debate, and then became more successful in school as a result of that. We've had, students with dyslexia that have significant difficulty with reading and writing, and there's a lot of reading and writing involved in speech and debate, and all of that practice is hugely beneficial to them, can increase graduation rates. So again, it's not just the students that you would typically think would be part of a speech and debate team that can participate and benefit from speech and debate. And one of my goals, I've been at CVU for 5 years, but this is my first year as the leader of the statewide organization. And one of my goals is to increase participation so that speech and debate is available to more students at more schools, and also so that more students at those schools participate in speech and debate. Greater likelihood of college readiness, again, goes along with that. It builds a lot of those skills that are important for college and beyond, and expanded career opportunities. One of the cool things about speech and debate is that it builds a big career network as well, because lots of other successful people have also participated in speech and debate, and so it's an instant connection to them. Just one example, I did an internship at a hedge fund, which, you think finance, not super connected to speech and debate. But when I went to the job interview was, you and this other candidate are going to debate this issue. And I'm like, great. So that was super helpful. And the reason they had that is because it's about your ability to logically understand the logical issues and how they connect with each other, and to understand, finance, even though it doesn't seem like it's about debate, it's about understanding the arguments for what is the successful strategy. And so that ability to understand the arguments and how they intersect, and to respond to other arguments and figure out what is best, was super helpful. So that internship paid for my entire senior year of college, so that was great. All right, you can go on to the next slide. And this is a study that they did recently. This is actually done by a competitor who I competed against at one point. it found that, just participating in 3 tournaments, so there's a debate league in Boston, and having students just participate in 3 debate tournaments it boosted their English achievement by the equivalent of, I think, 68% or about 2/3 of a year of English achievement, just by going to 3 tournaments. So, again, the fact that it's really difficult is hugely beneficial. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide. And as I was mentioning before, the students that benefit from speech and debate are not necessarily those who are already successful. And this is from that same study. The students that participate in the Boston Debate League, they found are actually more diverse than the Boston Public Schools as a whole. So they had more, so the dark blue is the Boston debaters, and then the light blue is the Boston Public Schools. So they had more economically disadvantaged students, more Black and Hispanic students overall than the Boston Public Schools. And in Vermont, we don't have as much diversity as the Boston Public Schools, unfortunately, but this has been true of my experience as well with Vermont debate, is that it attracts students from all different backgrounds. We have a lot of economically disadvantaged students who benefit tremendously from debate. Many of them go on to get college scholarships and things like that because of their participation. It's also super beneficial because students that aren't able to participate in sports teams or are not comfortable participating in sports teams for a variety of reasons. Some of them are, students in wheelchairs or students that have different gender identities that makes them not comfortable choosing, a girls sports team or boys sports team. Speech and debate provides many of the benefits of a sports team in terms of a team atmosphere, participation, friend network. And so that's been great in my experience. All right, you can go to the next slide. And this is just, so I was talking about kind of the network of debaters in the professional world. So one of the things that I do is whenever I read a story about a big court case, I look and see, do I know any of these lawyers? Because there's so many lawyers that are former debaters. And this is a cool one recently. There was a big cryptocurrency case.
Oh, thank you.
And I was scrolling through the article in the New York Times, and then I noticed, hey, I know that guy. And it turns out he was my husband's high school debate partner at Burlington High School, and he went on to debate for UVM. So there's a picture of him debating. And this was a huge, in New York City, big cryptocurrency case. So they put this guy in jail for a number of years. So same thing, the lawsuit that's trying to take Trump off the ballot in Colorado, former debater that I knew from my time in debate. So okay, so specifically in Vermont, we currently have 11 high schools with speech and or debate programs. And we just started this last year, a middle school program, and we started with only 2 middle schools at the first tournament, and we're now up to 5. So there are in high school 10 different events that we offer. So along with debate, there's a number of different events. Some of them are more kind of acting based events like dramatic interpretation or performance poetry. Some of them are kind of your classic speaking events. Original oratory is just giving an original speech on any topic. And then some of them, like contemporary speaking and impromptu speaking, are you draw a topic out of a hat and you either speak on it right away, or you have 30 minutes to research it and then give a speech with evidence. So it really is a variety of different skills that those different activities can build. And then in middle school, we just offer a few events that are, a bit simplified for middle school. And so they have original oratory, poetry, impromptu speaking, and then also debate. So this is the St. John's Very middle school team. And like I said, we started with just 2 teams at our very first tournament, but it's been growing a lot. So that's been great. And I'm hopeful for the future of our middle school league. Next slide. So some of the challenges of growing speech and debate in Vermont specifically. So first of all, it's not just Vermont. So I have a friend who works at the National Speech and Debate Association. So I spoke to her and she said it's been a big challenge nationwide that they're getting calls from principals all around the country saying, help, I have this speech and debate job and I can't find any teachers that are willing to do it. Or, I can't find anyone that's qualified to take the job. So there's been a big drop in, first of all, job candidates for speech and debate jobs. And then also a big drop in student participation nationwide, because for a couple of years when all the tournaments were virtual, that really killed off participation. It's not nearly as fun as going in person. But particularly in Vermont, we have some additional challenges. So the fact that we're a small state means that there's, you know, limited network effects. And one of the things I believe as a coach of CVU is that my interest in growing the debate team at CVU is also an interest in growing debate throughout the state. Because, for instance, one of my most committed students signed up to join the debate team because her friend had done it at South Burlington. So the more debate and speech and debate breeds speech and debate. And the more that we have it, the more we will have, you know, teachers that have done speech and debate who want to go on and coach it or do it in their classes. The more we'll have people who want to sign up and judge, the more we'll have people who will tell their peers to do it. So being a small state with, you know, with a lower baseline to begin with, it's been hard to build those kind of network effects. Particularly challenging is the fact that when we do have really successful speech and debate alums, unfortunately, they tend to get into big fancy colleges in other states and or get important jobs in other states, which is great for them, but it makes it challenging for growing debate in the state because again, so many of our alums go to New York or Washington and get great jobs there. But then we lose them in Vermont. Another challenge is that in Vermont, we have a pretty unique mix of urban, suburban, and rural environments. So if you look at where debate is thriving, really the ideal scenario for having thriving speech and debate teams is having a bunch of large suburban high schools in kind of the same area. And we really don't have that in Vermont. So one of the things I've also been doing is taking a look at, in the past 10, 20 years, there's kind of been a growing movement of urban debate leagues that are structured a little differently than the traditional debate team. They're structured in a way that is more cooperative. So they're sharing resources, they're sharing evidence, they're training their teachers together. They are, you know, drawing upon volunteers to limit costs. They're drawing upon outside funding and grants. And so I'm looking at, can we import some of the urban debate league model to Vermont? But we also need to adapt it to our more rural state because we also have a lot of poor schools in rural areas that we want to be able to participate in speech and debate. And so we have to find ways that we can do sort of similar things, but also draw on the rural schools. So our middle school program, which I mentioned that we launched this year, we modeled it heavily after the Atlanta Urban Debate League and the Minnesota Urban Debate League, which have sort of a similar middle school program. And like I said, so far it started small, but we've seen a lot of growth and we've seen participation from places like St. Johnsbury that don't have a high school debate team. So that's been great. So I'm hoping that we can adapt some of that model to Vermont. Another challenge for Vermont, again, long travel time to tournaments. So we have schools, of those 11 schools that have speech and debate teams, they're located all over the state. And so those of us in Chittenden County are lucky because we usually don't have to travel that far, but like we have a school in Manchester, Vermont that has to travel basically 2 hours to go anywhere to any tournament. So that's a big challenge for them. Limited funding and reliance on volunteers. So in most schools, if they have a speech and debate coach stipend at all, it is basically the lowest category of extracurriculars compared to, let's say, you know, the football or soccer or some other sports, which have a much larger stipend. So that makes it difficult to attract teachers who are interested in doing it. And some schools don't have a stipend at all. And then the whole statewide organization is run on volunteer labor. And then we also require a lot of judges from our tournaments, and those are generally volunteer labor. So mobilizing all of those volunteers is an obstacle. We're very grateful when we do get volunteers. I want to specifically thank Jean, who judged at one of our recent tournaments, because those volunteers make it possible. In general, we need a ratio of 1 volunteer for every 4 students who participate, which is a very high ratio of volunteers. But it's also one of the reasons it's so beneficial because they get a lot of individualized feedback from our judges. So we rely on volunteers and we're very grateful for our volunteers. In other states that have more funding for their speech and debate programs, they would hire their judges. They would hire, you know, former debaters or students to be judges, and that makes it easier to find people. But on the other hand, it is expensive. So we're grateful that we don't have to do that, that we do have enough volunteers to make our tournaments possible. Difficulty recruiting coaches. So even when schools do have stipends, it's often hard to find someone willing to take them. For debate, we have 9 tournaments a year, and those are usually a Saturday. It's usually taking up most of your Saturday, if not all of your Saturday. And And that's a lot, that's a lot. So for instance, this year, there's only 4 coaches, high school debate coaches in the entire state that are coaching this year that also coached last year. So it had tremendous amount of turnover, which is a big challenge, but we're working on ways to better train coaches and support coaches and foster more regional debate to increase retention. No speech debate curricular requirement. Some states where speech and debate are really thriving have a state requirement that all schools have speech and debate classes, and sometimes students have to take them to graduate. So for instance, Kansas, which is also a relatively rural state, has a huge thriving speech and debate community because every student has to take their speech and debate class to graduate. And so every school has a teacher who teaches it, and that person becomes almost an automatic coach. And so you can go to any rural area in Kansas on just about any weekend and find a speech and debate tournament. We don't have that in Vermont. Geographic dispersal of alumni, I already mentioned, they tend to go off to other areas. And then competition with athletics and other activities. In my limited experience, it seems like, more students in Vermont tend to play a sport at their school than where I grew up, which is great. There's tons of benefits of sports as well, but it does make it difficult to compete with students that are also competing in those activities. And then you add on band and other activities like that, and it's hard to compete for a limited amount of time. Okay, next slide. So I've already mentioned some of the things that we're doing to work to increase speech and debate participation in Vermont. We are modeling successful leagues from other states. So I talked to some of the people who run these urban debate leagues about some of the things that they do. I also talked to a coach at the University of Wyoming who's very involved in growing speech and debate in Wyoming, which is the only state smaller than ours and which has a much more robust speech and debate situation. So I'm hoping that we can learn from some of the things that they do in their states and bring them to Vermont. Improved outreach to new schools, parents, and volunteers. So this is a big one. We don't have a very great public presence. So things like this, I'm hoping will just increase awareness that there is that speech and debate that actually exists. And I can't tell you how often I've talked to someone, even at CVU, who says, we have a debate team. So we're trying to just increase awareness that it's out there because there are a lot of kids that are interested in participating, and either their school doesn't have a team, or they don't know that there's a team, or they don't know that there is a state league that they could become involved in. Just reaching out also to teachers and saying, would you be interested? Is there anyone at your school who'd be interested in starting a team? Or things like our website is a mess that hasn't been touched in 5 years, working on that sort of thing. I'm hoping will increase awareness of speech and debate. Increased collaboration with college debate teams. So I mentioned that we've had a lot of coach turnover this year, but we've really leaned heavily on, for instance, the debate team at UVM, the Lawrence Debate Union, and they've really been great in finding students that debate at UVM who are interested in coaching. And in my experience, the most successful coaching models are when they combine a teacher at the school who knows the kids and can help recruit at the school and can navigate the school administration with someone who has a background in speech and debate and can really bring the specific knowledge of how to do it. So that's the most successful coaching model. And so far this year, UVM has been very helpful. And then we're also hoping to kind of do the same in the Upper Valley area with some Dartmouth students. Alumni networking. A lot of the students that do go off to work in Boston or New York or Washington eventually do come back to Vermont because it's a great state that it takes a little while to find a job in Vermont. So we're trying to build a better network so that if they do come back, we know that they've come back and we can connect with them and we can get them involved. Fundraising and grants. So we're doing a couple of things to raise money to use as seed funding for new debate programs. So some schools are interested in starting debate programs, but they don't have funding, and they could maybe get it if they had enough student interest, but it's kind of a chicken and egg problem because until they have a team, they don't know if it's worth, trying to get the money for a team. So we're doing some fundraising and grant application to try to start some teams. And then hopefully once those teams exist and there's a lot of students involved, then they will become self-sustaining. Middle school participation. So the middle school league has seen great growth so far. And we found that a lot of students, I mentioned that it's really hard sometimes to get them to get over that initial hurdle of signing up for the tournament, but often middle schoolers I guess they feel less shame or something, but they're generally more willing to just give it a try and see if it's fun. And, they're also often less bogged down in like 15 different extracurriculars that they need to get on their college, application. So that's been, and then, I firmly believe it's not for everyone, but everyone should give it a try. And then if they like it and they want to continue doing it in high school, great. Coach training and professional development. Again, we need to be able to attract teachers that don't have a debate background or don't have a speech background. And so making them feel confident and comfortable working with speech and debate is important. So we're working on that as well. And we implemented a coach training for the first time this fall. And then finally, resource sharing, like some of those other leagues do, sharing materials for teaching the classes, for teaching speech and debate practices, sharing evidence so that the students don't have to start out by doing a bunch of research. They can give it a try first and then start doing more research. So that has been helpful so far as well. All right, so I think that covers everything. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Yeah, lots.
First of all, I'm thrilled that you're here and that
Thank
you
you.
exist. We were trying desperately to get students to participate in the Rotary speech contest.
Yeah.
And we had no success.
Yeah,
We tried 3 different high schools. I think Greg, I don't know if Greg contacted.
yes, he did contact me and I did share all that information with my students as well. Yes.
So and we tried MMU and Rice and so on. And so I'm just wondering how we can start earlier and how we can get students engaged. That's number one.
Yes.
Number 2 is I think Rotary would be thrilled to know that you exist.
Mhm.
And it would be great if you could present at RILA and also present at one of the next major, when's the next major Rotary gathering for everybody?
April 19th to 21st.
Of this month?
April.
Is that April?
That would be April.
Yeah,
At Lake
I'm
Maury.
sorry. I'm sorry,
Yeah, Lake Maury.
at Lake Maury.
wherever that
Yeah,
is.
I don't know what those are, but I'd be thrilled. to
So
present, yes.
that part would be great. And the third thing I wanted to mention when, many, many years ago, when my
Mhm.
kids were at South Burlington,
Mhm.
that did have a very robust program. Because I've had kids participate and so on. They started at 7th and 8th grade, and I remember being invited in because I was involved with Toastmasters
Mhm.
years ago. And we did a Toastmasters 2-week program, which was lots of fun. So there are many places that we can connect, and I
Yes.
think that would be wonderful.
Yes, I agree that I've been trying to get students to come to the Rotary Speech Contest as well. One of the things we could maybe discuss, I don't know if this is feasible, is integrating an existing speech tournament with the Rotary contest. I don't know if that would be doable, but then students would be there to participate in the interscholastic speech contest, and they could also participate in Rotary at the same time. And maybe that would attract, from both ends, students that want to do Rotary might do the interscholastic one, and students that want to do the interscholastic one might do Rotary. So that could be something we could explore perhaps.
Great.
Yes.
So how could we come and watch a debate?
So, they are generally, they're generally open to the public, with the exception of occasionally students that are, especially if they're new or nervous, and they'll say they don't want observers, and that's fine. If they don't want observers, no observers. But I can share our schedule. We only have, so this year we have the state competition, and we have one in Montpelier, and we have one at CVU. So I'm happy to share the schedule with you. So we just have 2 in February and then in March, and then we're done for the year.
I'll message you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So you're the coach, obviously, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you're so much more than that. It sounds like you're really trying to do so much for the state in general. So is that just by virtue of you being a coach, you're doing that because you want to grow the program, or do you have some other position that's making you so involved in growing it for
Yeah,
our
so,
state?
that's a good question. So there's a couple of things. So one is that, I'm fortunate enough, I do coach at CVU, but I'm not a full-time teacher there. I split my time between CVU and the debate job, and then I have a preschooler at home who's home with me a couple days a week. So I'm fortunate that I do have a little bit of extra capacity, whereas a lot of our coaches, teach a full day at school and then go on to have debate practice, and that's already stretching them very thin. So I do have a little bit of time to devote. You know, as I mentioned, everything that happens for the state organization is all volunteer. We don't have like any, you know, paid funding for the state position. So it's also just, it's a passion of mine. I think it's really important, really good. And I can say it changed my life and the life of many other people that were involved. So I really think it's important to bring this to students, and it's something that I feel is really worth my time. So I have the time to devote, and I think it's important to devote it to this. So I wish that we were in a position where we could, you know, bring more people in, but we're lucky already for the coaches that we have, because they're devoting their limited amount of time between their own kids and the kids that they teach at school to debate. And so we do the best we can with the time and the resources that we
Yeah,
have.
that's kind of what I assume. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Exactly.
Yes.
One of the things that I read, which I thought was interesting, that it turned out that more people are afraid of public speaking than of spiders. Really great. One of the things I did was work with all the colleges in Connecticut for community outreach. And so I would have a student for a whole year. They actually take a year off from school and then travel around working with all the colleges. And one of them was terrified, though, of public speaking. She didn't think of it so much when she went to the different campuses.
Mhm.
Then we would have a statewide conference at the Capitol, and she said, I don't think I can do it. I'm so nervous. When I get nervous speaking, my knees knock. So I said, well, we can fix that, because we'll get a lectern. And you
Mhm.
could stand behind it and nobody will know that. So I sat there watching her knees slowly start to stop shaking like that. But she went on and actually went into criminal justice,
Wow.
which she said she would never have had the opportunity to do it if she didn't feel comfortable with that. But I thought that beating out spiders was really good. And snakes too. Beating snakes also, yeah.
That's a great story. And yeah, that is an obstacle to getting a lot of kids to show up and try it for the first time. But usually once they try it and they realize it's really okay, like I like to tell them the stakes will never be lower. You know, if you go in to a debate round and you make a complete fool of yourself and, you know, you have nothing to say, that's fine. No one's gonna be mad at you. You're not gonna lose your job. You know, you do it and it's fine. You'll live another day. And the stakes only increase as it becomes, you know, a professional obligation to public speak. So I really encourage students to give it a try, see how it goes. And once you get over your fear, it really becomes much less intimidating. So thank you for that story. Yes.
So, this is just a comment. I was, a debater in high school.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're trying to convince kids to join debate,
Mhm.
you can tell them the story that I tell, which is after I got onto debate, I never lost an argument with my parents.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is one of perhaps the single most important thing that we can impart to students, because it teaches them to think and think on their feet. What could be more important? And yet, of all the many, many interesting things that are funded by the state of Vermont, this is not.
Yeah.
So that's just an observation. But I'm just wondering if you have any way to tweak the levers of power, any champions, for instance, in the legislature or something like that, that might push this along. It's just a shame.
That is a good point. I do know one former debater who is now a state senator who debated at Hartford High School, now is in the state senate. But also, you know, I mentioned that we're starting to work on some grants and other funding sources, and there are state grants for after school programming, things like that. I'm hoping we can leverage some of those. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
So how can we help? Because this is great information, and like everyone else, I'm really grateful that you're doing this, and I think it's really important. How can we?
That's a great question. I appreciate it. So one is that, like I said, we do rely on volunteer judges. So anyone who's interested in, you know, judging at a competition, we would be very grateful for your help. And another is just, you know, kind of the outreach, just spreading the word. CVU does have a team, and Shelburne Middle School has a team, but I'm trying to get teams at maybe some of the other middle schools in our district. There's no team at MMU or either of their middle schools at the moment. So, if anyone, you know,
Does
knows anyone that
Williston
might
have a
be,
team?
what'd you say?
Does Williston Elementary have a team?
Not yet. I'm hoping, we'll see. So yeah, any, you know, outreach that if you know people at those schools and you think that they might be interested and you want to just spread the word and you can connect anyone to me, I'm happy to talk to anyone who might be interested in getting involved.
How about the Jen's High School? Do they have one? Do you know?
I have a meeting for Jen's middle school after school program next week, so
Okay.
I'm working on Jen's.
We might.
One of the things that we found, our program was funded through the legislature. We had students go up to the Capitol and speak on behalf of that particular program. And one of them went on into, I think it was New York State and another one in Florida, that they were actually able to get funding that probably adults going and talking about it might not ever got through, but like somebody said, where did you find all these students? I said, you know, they're all your students that are here. So that might be the ultimate goal of debate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I agree. That would be
They'll
very
listen.
powerful.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you,
Catherine. We could ask a lot more questions. So we have one more little task for you, which is to draw the winning raffle. Oh, okay. The last three. 619.
Oh, sorry.
619. All right. That'll form a debater.
You got it.
Oh, yeah.
You've been running.
Thank you.
So a big thanks to Kathryn. Kathryn will be making a contribution to the Connecting Youth Mentoring Program at the Williston Central Schools in your name. So thank you for
Well,
that.
thank you.
Also, Barb, you mentioned you were very happy that Kathryn existed. I would like to take some credit. 50%. So thanks again.
Yeah.
So he's, that went well.
Yes.
And that was my youngest lady.
I always wished I'd joined the debates in retrospect, which I stupidly didn't do because I had to do a lot of public speaking. I was self-taught before I got any good, and I'm sure I would have been better. Any rate, why don't we start down here? Pastor Paul.
So, a dollar in honor of our speaker. Thank you so much, Kathryn. Because I know both of your parents, I give them credit as well. Thank you, so important. Thank you for the presentation. The other dollars will go in honor of Bill Stiff. I'll give you an update. I visited Bill just yesterday. He is, compared to where he was 10 days ago, there's been obviously some significant improvement. He is still in the hospital, in the middle wing of the hospital, awaiting, as I understand it, waiting space in rehab so he can begin rehab of his broken hip. But he misses all of you, wants me to convey his greeting and affection to all of you. He would love, we'll see if the miracles allow this to happen. He would love to be here on February 10th for the Story Slam. So those of you who pray, join me in praying in that direction. But I know Bill just wanted me to share with all of you how grateful he is for all the support he is experiencing. Feeling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update.
Chris, Beth.
Yes, the speaker, I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your energy, and you spoke so well about speech and debate. I sort of wish that I could turn the clock back and take advantage of opportunities I obviously missed, because these are really important life skills. To be able to stand up and have an argument. So thank you. I want to give a shout out to the city village. This year, for the first time in our development,
They are plowing our sidewalks. And it is so wonderful that they added that to their budget. I mean, I walk daily, several times a day, and to not be forced into the street is just fantastic. I keep hoping that Eric will be here so I can. And just again for the club. We have so many wonderful leaders in this organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Right. I'll jump in here. I'm gonna, first of all, for our speaker entertainment. And also, we have a really nice occasion coming up this weekend. Our next youngest grandchild is having a bat mitzvah. We'll be down in White Plains for that. That should be fun. We're gonna stop in Albany overnight, exciting Albany, right? Okay. And
Well, certainly $1 for our speaker. Yeah, it's not cough it up there. Saw a couple of moths fly out of there. If you're a Catholic, I'd say that was your first communion money. And then one for the Buffalo Bills, tough loss. There's always next year, but only a little bit of time before the Yankees open up with
there
their,
you go, all
they
right.
do a high-paid, high-powered lineup.
Charlie.
Monday, I had the privilege of patrolling at Mad River
Yeah.
with my son and my grandson. It just, I've been looking forward to 3 generations of patrolling. I couldn't quit until I have a photograph to share if anybody wants to see it. Yeah, just a great experience. And then my grandson ran me down the mountain and it's bogging for practice.
That's great.
$1 for the speaker and for everything you're doing for our students. It's really impressive, and I do hope we find some way to connect and
Yeah, I think it would
kind
be
of
great.
build on each other's efforts in this area. And then just for the encouraging news about Bill, I'm really glad to hear this progress.
Julie, whoops.
$1 for your speech here today. One of the things that we also found, there was a young lady in school, in college in Florida who knew about the program we were doing. And so he called and wanted some advice of what to do. And I said, well, you should find out who in the legislature there graduated from your school and go talk to them. She did that. They found funding that had been sitting and not being used. She started the program and they hired her when she graduated as the first director of it. So we have one of our former Rotary people, Angela, who's one of our Williston reps. Maybe you want to talk with her about how you can get those students there, because they will sell it.
You get her turned on. She'll go.
I just I get so excited. One of my students started locomotion.
All right. Barbara, you guys, I spoke for a
You
second.
spoke for both.
Vince.
$1 for the speaker. Kathryn, you're great. I really enjoyed it. I kind of echo what Chris said. You said it first, obviously, but yeah, I wish I would have been involved. Dan, $1. Sorry, Bill, that was
Hey, they finished ahead of the.
Harsh.
What can I say?
harsh. Yes, they did. They did. So go Ravens. And a third for Sherry's eggs.
Yeah.
I was pleased to see Dallas go down, actually, but. Right. Armand.
$1 for the speaker. Thank you very much, Kathryn, for being here today. And keep us informed of the schedule, because I think a lot of us would probably like to go to the debate. So. And $1 to Sally, because I don't think there's anyone in the club that gives as much time, volunteer time as
That's
you
true,
do. And $1 for the children of the world that are in war-torn countries. What a sad way to grow up, you know, but.
Yep.
We owe them better.
Farmer Mike.
This is for the speaker. Thank you, Kathryn. Also,
Big day in front of us.
just a plug for Bill Skiff, he's a town treasurer. They're few and far between. Just a quick story is one night, several years ago, we decided to have a concert night at the farm, Helen playing the piano and Bill brought a homemade gut bucket bass. We had a lot of fun. We invited a bunch of people and, Bill came up with the idea. We took a whiskey bottle, we put apple juice in it. And in between songs, Bill would say, let's do another drink. Shot glasses, take a shot. Bill had such a good time. At the end of the night, he fell over his bass, and fell off the ground. Bill's a character, Things like that we need to save in this town. And so I want to buy 2 tickets to, February 10th. I'll give you the money, Sherry, and I've got something at home I'd like to, share that night or that day as well.
Write it up, you put your name in the bucket.
I'll write it up then. Put my
Or,
name in the
yeah,
bucket.
write it up, but be prepared to tell a 5-minute story, put your name in the hat, and if you get done. Be fun,
Yeah, thank you.
cool.
Chris,
Thank all of you.
Yeah, absolutely. $1 for Kathryn. I know both your parents, they're wonderful people. They obviously did a really great job. Your energy is overwhelming. Holy cow. Do you take any breaths while you're talking? And my other $1 plus is for a speech sort of that I gave on Sunday upstairs. I had printed out Mark chapter 14 through 20, and it was my turn to read the scripture. So I had it folded up my pocket. I walk up front and Andrew, who was in the choir, is walking towards me back to his seat. And he knows that I have this on paper and he says, oh, it's already up there in large print. So I figured, great. I walk up to the podium. I look down, it's Pastor Paul's sermon. So that's my happy find.
You did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very well, Kelly.
So I have a lot of money here, but only a little bit of it's mine, so you can have it.
Thank you.
Money for Kathryn, thank you so much. I had forgotten I was on the debate team. You stood up there and started talking about it, and then I remembered. It was a wonderful experience, and I hope you can gather lots of people, especially middle school. I mean, I'm not surprised middle schoolers like to do it. I mean, they're so outspoken just by being middle schoolers anyway. Another $1 is for 10 days from now is truck day. All the equipment's heading for Florida for the Red Sox. And 6 days after that, the pitchers and catchers will start practicing. So I'm very excited. And also $1 or some dollars for our wildlife. If anybody wants to see it, I have the pictures of the deer in the backyard, but I also have a very spooky picture of a raccoon at night on the branch of our tree. He was looking toward us and a flash from my phone caught his eyes, so his eyes are lit up. Friend of mine said that would make a great Halloween time. Anyway, wildlife abounds on Oak Knoll Road.
Sure.
$1 for the speaker, thank you. I was not on the debate team. I don't know if I would have been good. My husband says I would have been. I think it'd be great though I can just envision the confidence that kids must build. And maybe there should be an adult program, not just for kids. My cat had a night at Bev's. And if ever you feel like you want to get rid of a few $1,000s, they had to spend the night at Bev's. But he's doing well now, so that's good. And then $1, I walked partway here this morning. So our pumpkin was super icy, glare ice. So whatever, you guys just drive careful when you're out and about and walk careful. Yeah.
Elizabeth.
So I've had an eventful few weeks, but one, Kathryn, I would love to connect and tell you about Ryla, because same group of people.
Okay.
So let's do that. I had a really amazing birthday, and then the next day we had a goat born at our house. And then a couple days after that, the guy who owned the goats took them all away. And then a bunch of stuff at my house broke. So part of this is in gratitude for Chris for helping me fix things at my house. And,
Yay, Chris.
and then another piece is, that I think we should diversify on sports here, so $1 for Michaela Schifrin, because, wow, she is amazing.
Right.
Quick announcement, just to rip off of Armin's comments about Sally's contributions. She just pulled the joker out of a big deck of cards and promptly donated her $100 winnings, excuse me, to the club charity account.
Oh.
$1 for the speaker and the program that she's working with. I was unfortunate enough to graduate from a high school that had 40 students in all 4 years.
Wow.
So we didn't have the luxury of debate teams. As a matter of fact, we didn't have enough people to have a debate. team.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important. $1 for the, great work that the club members do outside of being Rotary members. $1 for the notification on the television that, somebody was getting money from, Split the Ticket. And I wanted to say, hey, remember who started Split the Ticket? This club was the first donator of the money that began that program over 25 years ago. I'm so proud of the kinds of things that this club does. That and Wood for Good help keep Vermonters from freezing.
Right. I don't know if there's anyone on Zoom. I don't-
Yeah, there's a couple pages.
Anyone on Zoom?
Found that when I was writing things yesterday.
Is there anyone up there?
Oh, no, Dave is there, but.
Does David have anything to say?
Yes.
I will speak because I don't want you to all forget about me. Speaking from the Isle of Lamont branch of the Williston-Richmond Rotary. I want to thank the speaker. That was wonderful. Barbara, I was in Toastmasters. There's another great organization that I don't know if it exists. But the other thing is that Jude said that people fear spiders more. I always heard that people feared public speaking more than they feared dying. And I don't know. That is how scary public speaking is for most people. And then on a baseball note, I'm a little bit worried about the Red Sox because I have a feeling that they are just sort of passing on this next season and have not been active at all. So, and finally, everybody should be rooting for the Detroit Lions. Long-suffering organization that really is doing well. I have relatives out in Michigan, so I'm pulling for the Lions.
Well,
Have a good weekend.
our son-in-law actually flew in for the game last week and was thrilled, so.
Oh, good.
Yes, baseball, for most of the time, you start the season all excited, as I am, and by the end of the year, you're disgusted. Then you come back for more.
Ball. It's always gonna go the same way. There's no sport in that.
Oh, no, yes.
I have one more Bill Skiff note. He would welcome visitors. Feel free to stop by. You should know that he is technically in isolation, so when you come, you have to get in, but that should not interfere with your engagement with a guy who loves to engage with people. So go see Bill.
Thank you.
All right, good haul.
Far away from the bell. All right, with that, we will conclude. Thank you.